Now, the other thing we have going on is we have these they want to put hang tags on things. I show you this one here. I call them baloney tags, these boots that are 40 below zero, but well, how long, what conditions, those kinds of things. But the testing that's going on is static benchmark testing, and that's what you can do. You can take a sleeping bag, send it off to Kansas State University, say test it under the standard ISO testing protocol, and they'll come back and say, well, this sleeping bag is good for, its comfort range is, 0 degrees lower end, or its survival range is 0, and its comfort range is 20 above, or something like that. It's a static benchmark because they put it inside of a chamber with a heated dummy in it. Here's when we were testing our clothing at Kansas State University, dressing a dummy that's in there. It's a heated dummy, and they measure the amount of wattage that's going into that body, and then they measure the temperature on the outside, and they look at the heat flow through it because they're trying to maintain it at a constant temperature, and that'll tell you what the clo value is. Clo is a R value for clothing. And then they'll say, well, that's good to keep you warm at a temperature like this. So that was some of the testing we did, and then they'll put a hang tag on it like this that says it's good for that. And of course, there's not really any standard. There's getting to be better standards now on hang tags because if it has an ISO rating on it, comfort range, that's better testing that was done before because it was the Wild West. You put any number on it you want. That's what these people do because that boot doesn't even come close. Well, you can wear it at 40 below zero. And if you're sedentary, it's good for 5 minutes. If you're jogging, it's good for 30 minutes at 40 below zero. But, say it's comfort rated for 40 below is stupid. Anyway, so the benchmark testing is getting to be a little better because there is a standard there. So you look for the ISO rating on it, and that'll say, well, this is better tested. What you want is dynamic testing that's being done, and something that's kind of real world. Now, that's what this is. This is kind of dynamic. The industry insulations that they use for clothing and what have you. Let's go to that for a moment. Well, we talk about layers, so they'll teach layers like it's a religion. And then the different kinds of insulation that's being used is it'll be, down fibers and feathers. Real simple, fibers and feathers and or fur. Now the Eskimo used fur, and this was the thing that really works well because fur, when it's done right, when it's tanned properly, actually is pretty darn good insulation. What we use is better, but it's really good, but you could harvest it in the environment out there. So that was what you could use. So it's fibers, feathers, or fur is what you can use. But then we have another one, foam. That's the weird one. This is the odd guy out. Well, we go back to this, and what you don't want in your sleeping bag or in your clothing is feathers or fibers because of how they don't handle moisture. Here's what the foam looks like up close. That's the open cell polyurethane foam plastic. It's got all these popped bubbles in it that are stuck together with the corners of those bubbles in there. And you see it's very open, and the material is very hydrophobic. It doesn't like moisture, so the moisture doesn't cling to the surface of it. That's why when I showed this picture right here as a part of some of the testing that I do, here's a chunk of this foam. When you get the right foam, because people say, it's a sponge. No, it's not. It'll float on that water until all the water evaporates, and see that bead of water sitting on it? It's just sitting right on top of it because the foam doesn't like water. A close-up of it right here. You see that little bead of water right there? Now it's acting as a magnifying glass to enlarge those cells. So this stuff doesn't like water. It repels water, but it's full of holes, so the vapor will pass right through it because of the laws of physics says it wants to go from the inside to the outside as long as you don't put something in the way that slows it down or stops it. So the industry talks about, you got the industry's insulation. The industry talks about breathability and wicking. Well, I've already explained a little bit. I won't say much more there. When they talk about breathability and wicking, they're kind of meaning the same thing. I don't use the word wicking because in reality, or even the breathability the way they do, because the movement of the moisture through this is, and the measurement is its moisture, it's MVTR, moisture vapor transfer rate. What we want is a very high moisture vapor transfer rate through those things. Now, if I don't have any barrier there, if I have my hand, my wet hand or my sweating hand out in a wind that is at 40 degrees, boy, does the moisture move instantly, and you freeze because the moisture is going away with it. So the job of this insulation matrix and the fabric is to retain the heat by not allowing the air to move through it, but allowing the moisture to diffuse through it. So we have a moisture vapor transfer rate. We want that to be very high. We know what those numbers are. The industry doesn't. I do, because we did testing and we proved what they are. Now, what you want is that you want to understand that this environment that you're in, when you're in this human body, which is dynamic, this dynamic human environment, and you're going to go into a dynamic world around you. So you want to do some dynamic testing in a dynamic world. The way you do that is on living beings. That's what I did and what other people have done. You put thermocouples all over your body. You go out and you do things. Sometimes you do dumb things where you're at up here, like Mount Washington, New Hampshire. 13 below zero, 110-mile-an-hour wind. I'm out there in it, leaning into it because I wanted to find out how this clothing ensemble and the snorkel hood, how it all worked. So I got thermocouples on my body. That was when I was actually getting ready to go back up on Mount Washington for that wind test. And thermocouples on the body, as you see. Here's one of them right here. This is a hot test. This is walking back out of a canyon wearing my winter clothing when it is October. And I was hot. Well, I got thermocouples on there to say how I'm doing and how I'm feeling, and the fact that it works quite well. This is sleeping without a sleeping bag. I'm sleeping on top of my sleeping bag in my PALS clothing at 20 below zero. And I can't do that anymore because I don't have the physiology to let me do that, but I did it back then. Here's some dynamic testing that's weird. That's on a desert. The temperature was 105, and I'm in my Arctic clothing. Now, I made a change to it. I don't have the Arctic clothing fabrics on it, the same fabrics. So I changed them so that I can be in 105, and I have thermocouples on. You can see them right there breaking out they're down here on the footwear, and they're up on my chest. You can see them there. My partner associate with me, he was there just dressed in regular street clothing with thermocouples on him. Then we went over and got into my Suburban, this old Suburban that didn't have headliners or anything. It was just basic model Suburban with the windows rolled up, parked in the sun. It was 115 degrees in there. I'm in there in that same clothing. Now, theoretically, I'm dressed for, 20, 30, 40 below zero, except for the fabric. That shifts how it performs. My friend is now in there in his bathing suit with thermocouples on him, and he's in trouble. He is going to be injured. Heat stroke will set in, and we measure the temperatures. My skin temperatures are about normal. They're a little bit elevated, but they're about normal. It's insulating me from the heat like it does in the cold. Now, this won't work in the transitional temperatures. Trying to wear this stuff at 90 degrees where humidity's high, now it's not going to work because you don't move the moisture. The secret is still the fact that I'm able to perspire inside my clothing. I'm insulated from the hot heat out there, but there's a little bit of air. The moisture is wanting to come through it into the very dry environment now. So it still wants to go to where it is dry. In this case, it's not so much the temperature differential that's driving it, it's the relative humidity that's driving it. It's humid inside that clothing next to me. I'm sweating. It's dry as a bone on the outside, and it still wants to come out. Okay. And then you do other dumb things like crawl down through a hole in the ice and wear this clothing and then don't have fire and sleep and those kind of things. So looking for this dynamic testing, this dynamic body that wants to maintain a constant core temperature. That's a little bit about how and why it works, what we do, why we do it in here. And that just brings us down to this cocoon and the experience I'm having. And of course, I've told the story to some of you here. A little bit of the backstory was with how Keith Chandler, one of my friends who worked for me for a period of time, and then he went off and under both my tutelage and my encouragement has been doing some things with FoamClothing. We had interesting experiences with business partners and things like that. That was weird, but he never gave up on it. He never quit. He learned how this stuff works and why. My other backstory is this: back in 1970, I was injured while I was in the Navy aboard that aircraft carrier, the CVA-31 Bonhomme Richard, and spent weeks in the hospital, things like that, injured my back, doing pretty good. I was discharged in 1973, medical discharge. but have gone through trouble. And then I fractured my hip and threw my back way out. And so it's been really bad for the past 4.5 years. I can't get in bed. When Keith showed up with this cocoon, because I started doing some testing, and I watched what he was doing with making some adjustable bags that were adaptable and how you'd fold them and do this, and you can make it long, you can make it short, you could put kids in them, you do that. It's kind of neat, but it's complex. It was great. It worked well using the right technology, but the complexity. He showed up. He said, "I want you to see the new one," after he just started again, because I just kept giving him, looks, and I said it's great, but I wasn't sold on it. He showed me this one right here. And in my mind, it was snap. I saw it instantly because I knew what the technology would do. It's just I couldn't get in the darn thing. I'm really excited about this because of what it'll do and how it will help people. I want everybody to have one. Well, they ain't cheap. I mean, the materials are expensive. This foam, we were making clothing back in the 80s, and I was selling foam to students, we were buying it for 10 cents a board foot. We could double the price, 20 cents a board foot. Now the price on foam is in the dollar to $2 a board foot, depending on how, when, and where you buy it, and it's expensive because there's 32 board feet in this or more. And then the fabrics; these are not cheap fabrics. These are fabrics that when you buy them by the yard, they're going to be 10, 12, $15 a yard. Some of them are above that. Some of them that they're $20 a yard. Okay, they're expensive fabric. So, but these sleeping bags, the way we made it, they were made with the right foam and everything. I can't crawl in that thing because I am very restricted in my ability to move. I cannot crawl into a bag. Okay, put a zipper on the side. No, I can't reach down to zip the zipper up. The only way I can get in one of these things, I have to crawl in the end. Now, that was my mindset, and I'm just kind of like, and I tried other kinds of things. Yeah, we had some sleeping bags with zippers, but I can't zip them. He brought this thing to me, show how it worked. And it was, I can get in that thing. Well, we showed this before, just how to get in this thing. It's real simple here, how you open it up. Now, I don't do it exactly the way she does it here, similar to it, but I don't have control of my legs, my body, my hips, and my movement. I just sit on the edge of the bed. I just swivel around my feet and I slide up under that edge, and I just work my way into it very easily. And so you can be down inside of this cocoon. Cocoon works. We're also calling it a pod. That's the name I used on these sleeping bags. It's not a bag. So it's not a sleeping bag. It's a sleeping pod. It's a sleeping cocoon. This is pretty much how I sleep with this thing open. And I sleep all the way on my right side because I cannot lay on my back for very long because of pain. So this is the little device here. And I was in it this morning again. You can go all the way down inside. When I was sleeping at 22 degrees in my garage, that picture I showed there, I was down inside this thing. Now, the other thing I want you to understand is that what you wear inside of it can affect the performance. This pod, this cocoon, will work better than anything else, no matter what you're wearing, but it works best when you don't have much in there, and you certainly don't have any cotton wool, down, or any kind of a vapor barrier or hydrophilic material on. Now, the way I sleep, here's a picture. It's been the same way I slept this morning when I was in it. That's me in the bag, looking at my feet, taking a picture with my camera in there in the middle of the night. Okay. I don't sleep with much on. It's just my synthetic undergarments. That's it. Nylon, polyester. And they're short sleeved. I'm not trying to insulate or do anything. This bag, this cocoon, is this little room. And part of the secret and how it works, one of those terminologies that I didn't tell you about, I'll mention right here, because there's a thing I have to give names to these things because the industry doesn't know anything about them. I call it dynamic loft. The thing you'll notice about this foam stuff is it's stiff. Look at this bag right here. It's stiff. And you look at this guy bundled up in there, it's kind of, it doesn't drape. It doesn't have a drape and a hand to it. It's kind of stiff. It stands away from you. You can see the hips right here and the shoulder right here. And there's all this gap and spacing in there. Now, we normally think in terms of with a regular sleeping bag, you don't want that because all the air that moves around inside there. Oh, we want that in this case, this stiff foam matrix. So here you are in this pod in here. and it stands away from you. I'm sleeping on my side and it's standing away. And I've got this little insulated room that heats up almost instantly because it's retaining the heat. As soon as I get in that thing, it's kind of this neutral warm air, but the moisture that's coming off my skin, because it's coming off 24/7, it's passing right through that bag to the outside. It doesn't build up in there. And this is the rub with regular bedding and clothing, is that it's going to build moisture. So the reason that you want to use this technology, and the cocoon's the best way to do it, and I'll simply tell you that what you want to do, if you possibly can, get one of these things. Now, there's some people that say, I can't afford it. Okay, but let me tell you how you get one of these things if you really want to do it. And I'll go to the other thing. I'll teach you if people want to do this, but I'm going to almost beg you to not do it. But I will teach in the Winter Without Worries course how to make these sleeping bags, these pods like this, and they work wonderfully well. I can't use them because I can't crawl in it. And if you have limited mobility in your legs and back and what have you, you probably can't. Well, maybe you can get in it, but for a guy who has to bail out in the middle of the night 3 times to get up and drain the radiator, trying to wiggle myself down in there that'd take me, 3-4 minutes to get in there, it's not going to work out very well. Good thing they're washable. Anyway, you want one of these things. Or you build it with the right material. It'll cost you anywhere from $150 for material, or maybe a little bit more, depends on size and a few things where you buy it. But then you've got to put 20, 30, 40 hours of your time into it to make one of these things. The reason I would beg people to not say I'm going to make it, if there's any way you can buy one, because I've had dozens, maybe hundreds of people through the years buy foam from me and other places where they found it. Sometimes they got the wrong foam, bad foam. That's not good. You want to be sure you get good foam and good materials. But they bought the clothing to make sleeping bags and or the clothing. And I have piles of the foam that they have given back. They say, we're not using them. We're not getting around to it. Do you want this stuff back? I take it back. And I have other people they throw it away. They've sat on that foam for 10, 15, 20 years, didn't get around to building it, and it's in the way. It's this big stack of stuff, and so they throw it out or give it away to people to make, cushions out of and things like that. So if you're going to do it, you got to really do it, because I am frustrated at the literally thousands of dollars of foam that people have bought and didn't build anything. Now, I understand if you got 10 people outfitting there and you go like, it's thousands of dollars, I can't do that. Here's the other thing I'd suggest that you do. If you say I can't afford to get one, here's one other thing. Remember that little discount coupon I told you about that's on the K3 Core website? Now, when you go there for me, if you would please fill out the questionnaire and put my reference number, which is JP, put that in there, because that gives you a 10% discount and it gives me a little finder's fee, because K3 Core is not my company. I'm associated, I'm working with, I'm the keeper of the faith, if you will. What's my job in this? To be sure, I'm not worried about Keith screwing it up, but I'm just there to add to it my understanding, what I've done, because I've done this for a long time. Anything that he's going to make, we make it as good as we can. So I'm a consultant to him. But I make a little finder's fee on it. So will you. Now, there's no cash involved in that, because you're getting a store credit for right now. The only thing that's available is the pod or the cocoon. Coming in the future will be some other things that if you refer people and they buy, then you get a credit, a percentage. I don't know what the number is, except this. When you have referred 8 people who purchase, or one person who buys 8, doesn't make any difference, cocoons, then you will get one. You'll get a coupon for one. You can either sell that for cash to somebody else, discount it, give it away, keep it, put it in storage. And you don't have to own one to be able to refer people. Now, it's going to be easier to refer people when, say, I used one, I love it, you ought to get one. Okay, that's a little easier than to say that these things are really great. I saw about them, I learned about them, I want one, and maybe you want one too, so let's refer people. See, I made the point in the very beginning, you can't sell these in the store. You can't sell them in a catalog. No matter what you say about it, it's weird. It's different. It's foam. It's a sponge. It's everything wrong that you can think of. It's not down. It's not Qualifill. It's not big brand name. It's not waterproof. It's not all kinds of things. So it can't be any good. You use it and you'll find out how good it is. And let's show this little video here real quick. Again, getting into it. Doesn't have a zipper. That's important because I can't use a zipper. Has those little, look like snaps. What they are, they're little magnetic clips that when you get inside of it and they just slide to one side. You can't pull them apart except in one direction. It takes about 1 pound of pressure to pull them apart. In any other direction, you'll tear the fabric before they'll come undone. Okay, getting out, what it looks like. There you are down, and when it's cold, you're all the way down inside. Do you have to put your head inside? Of course not. I don't do that. But if it's cold, you go down inside, you breathe inside of it, which the sleeping bag industry doesn't want you to breathe down inside the bag. They want you to have your head out because of the moisture that's going to come out of your lungs, out of your breath, and accumulate in their bag because they're made with feathers or fibers, and they collect moisture. So they always have a hood on them, so you sleep with your head outside. Well, that's losing a lot of heat. And here's the other little thing. I didn't even have that in this stuff, in the list of things. One of the other little things that's important here. When you're down inside, when it's really cold, you remember this idea that moisture moves from where it is warm to where it is cold? Okay, you're sleeping with your head out and you're breathing this below zero air. Well, you're losing a lot of heat when you do that because you're bringing in that cold air, you're warming it up, and you're breathing it back out. Now it's warm air. What do you see when you breathe it out? That steam. That is sucking moisture out of your body like crazy. As a matter of fact, during a night, if you're breathing this below zero air, you can breathe away a half a gallon of water a night. You've got to drink that to make up for it because when you become dehydrated, you get cold. I don't care what the temperatures are. That's probably one of the reasons a lot of you people are talking about, I'm cold when I sleep and I'm cold all the time in the house in the winter and what have you. You might just be chronically, mildly dehydrated. You ought to try drinking a whole bunch more water. It's good for your health. So when you go down inside when it's really cold, you're breathing warm air and it's somewhat humidified air. And that humidified air doesn't build up on the bag. There's still moisture coming through it. As a matter of fact, if you were to look at this thing and you get just the right look at it in very still below zero air, you will see fog coming through this thing. I've watched it on the clothing. I've been able to sit and watch the fog, the little steam just wafting out of there. It has to be dead calm. And you just see the moisture vapor coming out. It starts out as moisture vapor as a liquid, and partway through it changes into crystalline ice, and it passes through these tiny little droplets of frozen ice. There is nothing else on planet Earth that works like this, and the industry has no clue. If you haven't seen this, go watch it, because when the power grid is gone, when it has failed for whatever reason, there you are in a cold house that you have no way to heat that house, and it's going to be chilly. Now, you might be in the kitchen, you might be doing some cooking or what have you, but in your bedroom, in the rest, it's going to be cold. Yes, you have bedding. You have bedding that will collect moisture. Another law of physics. Moisture transfers heat 25 times faster than air. What do we use for insulation? Air. That's all we use for air in here. This little matrix, it's air. This collects no moisture, this foam. These fibers collect moisture. Now, it's not a lot of moisture. It's not like they're going to get instantly soaking wet. And the feathers, and even though they put some coatings on them, so they're going to be waterproof for a while, but it breaks down over time. The other thing is about the longevity of this stuff. This foam, you see, I have a sleeping bag made in 1969, still perfectly functional. Good foam, good fabrics. These Qualifill fibers, they oxidize over time, they break down, they become brittle. And the same thing with down. and feathers. They become brittle over time. They have a shelf life of about 10 years, 10, 12, 15 years, and they start to become brittle. And the more you flex them and use them, the more they fail and you lose your loft. So I got a sleeping bag that's more than 40 years old, 50 years old, whatever it is. And it's still perfectly functional. It doesn't break down with time. No, the other thing that breaks these things down, washing it. That's the other great thing. You wash these cocoons and, bathtub, a little liquid detergent, wash them. You can wash them hundreds of times. You can't wash your feathers and your fibers very often. They fail. All right, that's a whole lot there. That's an hour's worth of drinking from a fire hose. Um, I've got to figure out how to tell that, how to illustrate it, make it short and simple. And we'll say why this is so critical for you to have in a grid down situation, because your bedding that you think you have that's going to take care of you is not going to work. Now, I'll teach you how to make it work up to a point, because you have to have multiple sets of it and change it daily, because it's building a little bit of moisture every day. You sleep in it 3 or 4 days or nights, and in this cold room, because you're a warm body putting moisture into it every night, and it's building up because it doesn't come out because you don't have a heated room. That's why it works in your home right now. Well, because you have a heated room and it dries out. You're not in it very much. When you're in a grid down situation, you might be spending more time in bed and pumping more moisture into it. A whole bunch of things. I mean, it's complex. It's all this interrelated things. All right, I better be quiet here, because I'll think of something else to say. As a matter of fact, I did think of one more thing I really want to emphasize, and that is this. Many of you know, but if you don't, I've been working with FoamClothing since 1962. Have been making things for myself, teaching other people about that, and then starting in 1984, I made it my whole profession to be talking about cold weather and winter, and the FoamClothing was always a part of that, including making some foam sleeping bags. When Keith Chandler brought this pod to me, as I was watching what he was doing, when he showed me this pod and how it worked and that I could use it, I became very excited, as you can tell. As a matter of fact, I will tell you that it is more important than the FoamClothing, than the Thermal Johns, TJs, than the PALS clothing, than the footwear, than the mucklucks, than any of those things. This pod is more important for the general populace, for the most people, because when we lose the power grid, almost everybody is going to have a cold bedroom. And you need to get good sleep, as I've emphasized in here. So this is what is more important than any of the other FoamClothing items, to get that, because I can help the most people the fastest, the soonest, and right now, as we get the word out and as people can get those things. So that's why I emphasize this so much, is it's so critically important. It will literally change your ability to be comfortable and to survive. If you're not familiar with my website, go there. You'll find the YouTube link there. You'll find lots and lots of free programs. You'll also find some subscription programs. That's how I make a little bit of money to pay for all the things that I'm doing, or some of what I'm doing. By those classes, Winter Without Worries, where I'll teach you about those things. So that's what we got for today, to get the monkey off my back onto yours, to make some decisions about how you're going to deal with loss of power grid in the future.